The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while Ryan Caldwell was sitting through yet another mind-numbing corporate budget meeting. His phone vibrated insistently in his pocket, and when he finally excused himself to answer it, the news hit him like a physical blow. His grandfather, Arthur Caldwell, the man who had taught him to fish, to identify constellations, and to value honest work, had passed away in his sleep at the age of 86. Ryan hadn't expected to inherit anything significant. His relationship with his grandfather had always been about the moments they shared, not material things, which was why the reading of the will 3 days later left him speechless. And to my grandson, Ryan Caldwell, I leave Willow Creek Farm in its entirety, including all 20 acres of farmhouse equipment and associated water rights. The attorney read in a monotone voice that failed to capture the magnitude of what was being conveyed. Ryan's cousins, whom he barely knew, shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. They had received modest financial bequests, but Ryan had received the land that had been in the Caldwell family for 4 generations. "There's a letter for you as well," the attorney added, sliding a sealed envelope across the polished mahogany table. Later that evening, in the quiet of his sterile downtown apartment, Ryan opened the letter with trembling hands. Asterisk, Ryan, asterisk. Asterisk, I'm leaving you the farm because out of everyone, you're the one who understood what it meant to me. I know you've been trapped in that corporate job for years, wearing a tie that might as well be a noose. The farm isn't just land, it's freedom. It's a chance to build something real with your hands and watch it grow, asterisk. Asterisk, the property taxes are paid through the year. The equipment needs work, but it's all there. Be careful with the new development next door. They've been trying to buy the water rights for years. Don't sell, no matter what they offer you, asterisk. Asterisk, remember what I always told you. A man who grows his own food answers to no one, asterisk. Asterisk, Grandpa Art, asterisk. 2 weeks later, Ryan found himself standing at the edge of Willow Creek Farm, the afternoon sun warming his back as he surveyed what was now his responsibility. The farmhouse needed work, the white paint peeling in places, the porch sagging slightly on one side, but it stood solid and welcoming. Behind it stretched fields that had once produced some of the county's finest produce, but now lay fallow after his grandfather's declining health had forced him to scale back operations. To the east, Ryan could see what his grandfather had warned about: Oak Ridge Estates, a development of large, eerily identical homes with manicured lawns, pressed against the farm's boundary. A decorative stone wall marked the division between the two worlds, with security cameras positioned at regular intervals facing outward, toward the farm, not inward to protect the residents. As Ryan walked the property line, a silver Mercedes slowed on the other side of the wall. The window lowered, and a woman with immaculately styled blonde hair and oversized sunglasses assessed him with unconcealed disdain. "You must be Arthur's grandson," she said, not bothering to introduce herself. "I'm Eleanor Harrington, president of the Oak Ridge Homeowners Association. When you're ready to discuss selling, our offer still stands." Ryan smiled politely. "Nice to meet you, Miss Harrington. I'm Matt Selling." Her smile tightened. "You might want to familiarize yourself with the county codes regarding agricultural activities in residential adjacent zones. We've had some concerns about your grandfather's operation in recent years." "I'll be sure to review everything," Ryan replied, maintaining his composure despite the thinly veiled threat. "My grandfather was always very careful about legal compliance." "Of course he was," she said with a dismissive wave. "Welcome to the neighborhood. I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of each other." As the Mercedes pulled away, Ryan noticed a for sale sign on one of the Oak Ridge properties closest to the farm. The asking price made his eyes widen, nearly 7 figures for less than a half-acre lot. No wonder they wanted his land. That evening, as Ryan sat on the porch with a legal pad, sketching out plans for bringing the farm back to life, he thought about his law degree gathering dust and the corporate job he already decided to leave behind. He hadn't expected to become a farmer at 35, but standing in the fields earlier that day, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: purpose. Little did he know that the seemingly casual encounter with Eleanor Harrington was the opening move in a battle that would ultimately determine not just the fate of Willow Creek Farm, but Ryan's entire future. The resignation letter had been surprisingly easy to write. After 7 years at Braddock and Miller Financial Consultants, Ryan composed his departure notice in less than 15 minutes, the words flowing freely as he explained he was leaving to manage a family agricultural business. His supervisor's stunned expression when he handed in his 2 weeks' notice told him everything. No one walked away from a 6-figure salary to become a farmer. But that's exactly what Ryan did. The morning after his last day at the firm, he woke before dawn, made coffee in his grandfather's percolator, and sat on the porch watching the sunrise paint the fields in gold. For the first time in years, he felt the weight on his shoulders dissipate. His corporate severance, combined with savings, gave him enough runway to get the farm operational. Ryan spent the first week meeting with neighboring farmers, many of whom had known his grandfather for decades. Art was one of the good ones, said Frank Donovan, who owned 50 acres to the north. Knew more about this land than anyone. That water agreement you've got is solid gold. Your granddad fought hard for those rights when they started building that fancy development. When Ryan asked about the HOA, Frank's expression darkened. They've been pushing all of us, but your place got the worst of it because it borders their precious enclave. They'd filed noise complaints during harvest, called the county about equipment stored outside. Petty stuff, but constant. Art never backed down, though. Any advice? Ryan asked. Document everything, Frank said firmly. Every interaction. Every complaint. They're slick, these folks. All smiles while they're stabbing you in the back. Ryan took the advice to heart, starting a detailed logbook of all HOA-related matters. He spent the next 2 months rehabilitating the farm, repairing irrigation lines, servicing the tractor, clearing overground sections, and studying sustainable farming practices late into the night. He focused on crops that would thrive in the local climate with minimal chemical intervention, heirloom tomatoes, specialty peppers, several varieties of lettuce, and sweet corn. The water for the farm came through an easement that crossed what was now Oak Ridge Estates property. The legal agreement, established in 1973, guaranteed Willow Creek Farms access to the natural spring that had historically supplied water to several properties in the area. The documentation was ironclad, with county recordings dating back decades. Ryan's first encounter with the HOA's formal bureaucracy came in the form of a certified letter precisely 94 days after he took possession of the farm. Asterisk, Dear Mr. Caldwell, asterisk. Asterisk, the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association has received multiple complaints regarding your property at 1425 County Line Road. Specifically, concerns have been raised about asterisk. Asterisk 1. Unsightly agricultural activities visible from Oak Ridge Estates residences asterisk 2. Potential negative impact on property values due to commercial farming operations asterisk 3. Unpleasant odors from organic fertilizers asterisk 4. Excessive noise from farm equipment during early morning hours asterisk. As president of the Oak Ridge Estates HOA, I must inform you that while your property is technically zoned for agricultural use, we expect all neighboring properties to maintain standards that do not detract from our community aesthetic asterisk. We request a meeting to discuss mitigation strategies, including the possibility of installing visual barriers at your expense or considering a mutually beneficial property transfer arrangement asterisk. Sincerely asterisk. Eleanor Harrington asterisk. President, Oak Ridge Estates HOA asterisk. Ryan crafted a polite but firm response, reminding the HOA that agricultural activities were legally protected under county right-to-farm ordinances. He attached copies of the relevant statutes and the water easement documentation, concluding with an invitation for HOA representatives to visit the farm for an educational tour about sustainable agriculture. His letter was met with silence, at least officially. Unofficially, he began noticing increased drive-bys from security vehicles with the Oak Ridge Estates logo emblazoned on their doors. Sometimes they would park across from his property for hours, taking photos and notes. The first sign of trouble came in early June, just as Ryan's crops were reaching a critical growth stage. He was inspecting the rows of heirloom tomatoes, noticing with pride how the plants had doubled in size over the past few weeks, when he spotted yellowing leaves on several plants at the far end of the field. By the next morning, more plants showed symptoms of stress, wilting despite the moderate temperatures, their leaves curling inward. Ryan checked the irrigation system, expecting to find a clogged filter or a malfunctioning pump. The pressure gauge on the main line showed an unusual reading. 32 psi, well below the normal 58 psi the system had consistently maintained since he repaired it. He traced the water line toward the source, following it to where it crossed onto Oak Ridge Estates property through a utility easement that had been established decades before the development existed. There, partially concealed beneath a decorative rock arrangement that hadn't been there the week before, Ryan discovered the problem. A flow restrictor had been installed on his water line. The device, typically used by utilities to limit water consumption for non-paying customers, had been professionally attached to the pipe. This was no amateur tampering. Someone with plumbing knowledge had deliberately throttled his water supply. Ryan documented everything with his phone camera, taking multiple angles of the restrictor and its placement, then called the County Water Authority to report the tampering. The technician who arrived seemed uncomfortable when Ryan explained the situation. "Look, I'm just here to verify if this is water department equipment," the technician said after examining the device. "And it's not ours. This is a privately installed restrictor. I can't remove it without authorization since it's on Oak Ridge property." "But it's on my water line, which I have a legal easement for," Ryan argued. The technician shrugged apologetically. "That's a legal matter between you and the property owner. I'd suggest contacting an attorney. Ryan didn't need to contact an attorney. He was one, even if corporate finance had been his specialty rather than property law. He drafted a formal cease and desist letter to the Oak Ridge HOA board that afternoon, citing the illegal tampering with his water supply and demanding the immediate removal of the restrictor. He delivered it personally to Eleanor Harrington's home, where her housekeeper accepted it with a tight-lipped nod. 3 days passed with no response and no change to the water pressure. Ryan's crops continued to deteriorate under the stress of insufficient irrigation. The financial implications were becoming serious. Without adequate water, he stood to lose a substantial portion of his first harvest. When the HOA finally responded, it was with a letter from their attorney. Dear Mr. Caldwell, my firm represents the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association. We are in receipt of your letter dated June 7th, the association denies any knowledge of or responsibility for the water flow device you referenced. However, the association does maintain the right to regulate utilities within its jurisdiction, including those passing through common areas. The board suggests that if you are experiencing agricultural difficulties, you might consider connecting to the county municipal water supply like other responsible property owners in the area, rather than relying on outdated easements that may no longer be suitable for commercial farming operations. Sincerely, Harrison Wells, Esquire, Wells, Pritchard and Associates. The letter was a masterpiece of legal misdirection, denying responsibility while simultaneously justifying the action and suggesting Ryan abandon his water rights. The municipal connection would cost tens of thousands of dollars and subject him to commercial water rates that would make farming financially impossible. Ryan spent the next week installing a temporary rainwater collection system and bringing in water trucks to save his crops, all while documenting the mounting costs. At night, he researched similar cases of easement interference and consulted with Frank Donovan about his options. You need proof, Frank advised, trail cameras, the kind hunters use. They're motion-activated and work at night. It was good advice. Ryan purchased 4 high-resolution wildlife cameras and concealed them in trees and bushes with sight lines to different sections of his water line. Then he waited. 5 days later, at 1:47 a.m., the cameras captured exactly what Ryan had suspected, but couldn't prove: 3 figures approaching his water line where it crossed Oak Ridge property. Even in the infrared footage, Eleanor Harrington was unmistakable with her distinctive. "This is textbook tortious interference," James Chen said, examining the video footage on Ryan's laptop. The prominent attorney had driven out to Willow Creek Farm the same day Ryan called, arriving in a sleek black Tesla that looked comically out of place parked next to Ryan's mud-splattered pickup truck. "We need to move fast to mitigate your crop damage," James continued, already typing on his phone. "I'm filing for an emergency injunction this afternoon. Judge Myers is on the circuit today. She's fair and doesn't appreciate this kind of vigilant property nonsense." By sunset, a county sheriff's deputy was serving Eleanor Harrington with court papers at her front door while Ryan and a plumber removed the illegal valve from his water line. The emergency order required the HOA to cease all interference with the water easement and explicitly prohibited any Oak Ridge Estates board members from coming within 50 feet of the utility corridor without court permission. Eleanor's face had turned an alarming shade of crimson as she accepted the papers, her perfectly manicured nails crumpling the edges of the document. "This is absurd," she sputtered to the impassive deputy. "We have every right to protect our community from agricultural runoff and contamination." "Ma'am, I'm just here to serve the papers," the deputy replied. "You'll need to take your concerns to the court." The injunction bought Ryan time, but significant damage had already been done. Nearly a quarter of his tomato crop was lost, and other plants showed signs of stress that would affect their yield. James helped him document every loss meticulously, photographing damaged plants and creating detailed financial projections of lost revenue. Ryan thought the court order would end the harassment. He was wrong. 3 days after the water was restored, Ryan woke to the sound of trucks on the access road that ran along the eastern edge of his property. Through the morning mist, he watched as Oak Ridge Estates landscaping contractors dumped loads of hedge trimmings, grass clippings, and other yard waste just inside the boundary of his farm, technically on his property, but close enough to the line that they could claim it was an accidental overflow. The organic waste wasn't just unsightly, it posed a genuine risk of introducing invasive species and plant diseases to his carefully maintained fields. Ryan documented the dumping, then installed additional cameras covering that section of his property line. That night, Ryan's sleep was interrupted by blinding light flooding his bedroom. He rushed to the window to find a pair of security vehicles parked at the edge of the Oak Ridge property, their spotlights aimed directly at his farmhouse. When he called the sheriff's department, the vehicles left before deputies arrived, only to return the following night with the same tactic. "They're trying to wear you down," James advised during their daily call. "This is classic harassment strategy. Death by 1,000 cuts. They figure you'll eventually give up and sell." The situation escalated when Ryan received notice from the county zoning office about a petition to reclassify his property from agricultural to residential transitional status, a change that would severely restrict his farming activities. The petition had been filed by a development company that, after some research, Ryan discovered was owned by Eleanor Harrington's husband. "They're pulling strings at the county level now," Ryan told James, forwarding the notice. "Someone on the inside is helping them." James wasn't surprised. Eleanor's brother-in-law sits on the county planning commission, small-town politics at its finest. Ryan decided a direct approach was needed. He drove to Eleanor's house, finding her tending to her prize-winning roses in the front garden. She straightened when she saw him, her expression a mixture of contempt and wariness. "Mr. Caldwell, I believe all communication should be through our respective attorneys now." "I just want to understand why," Ryan said, keeping his voice calm and his distance respectful. "This farm has existed for generations. It's never harmed anyone in your community." Her composure slipped for just a moment. "People like you don't belong here. This is a premium community, not farmland. We have the resources to wait you out." Ryan nodded slowly, recording the conversation on his phone in his pocket, legal in their state with single-party consent. "Thank you for being honest, Ms. Harrington. I'll remember that statement." As he walked back to his truck, Ryan felt an odd sense of clarity. This wasn't just about the water anymore. It was about power, the assumed power of wealth to dictate who belonged and who didn't. For the first time since the conflict began, Ryan was certain of one thing. He wasn't going to be waited out. The conference room at Chen, Moskowitz, and Williams looked exactly as Ryan remembered from his days practicing law, all polished mahogany and leather chairs with a sweeping view of the city's skyline. The difference was that now he sat on the client's side of the table, his hands roughened from farm work, his face tanned from days in the fields. 6 people were present for the strategy meeting: Ryan, James, 2 associates from the firm, a forensic accountant, and Dr. Eliza Watkins, an agricultural economist from the State University. Spread across the table were months of meticulously organized evidence, photographs, videos, financial projections, expert assessments of crop damage, and transcripts of conversations with Oak Ridge Estates representatives. "We've structured this as a multi-pronged lawsuit," James explained, sliding a thick document across the table. "The complaint runs to 78 pages, which is substantial but necessary given the scope of their actions." Ryan flipped through the filing, noting the defendants listed the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association as an entity, the 5 individual board members including Eleanor Harrington, the property management company that administered the HOA, and the landscaping contractor responsible for the waste dumping. The charges include tortious interference with business, violation of easement rights, property damage, harassment, and, this is where it gets interesting, racketeering under state statutes, James continued. "Racketeering?" Ryan raised an eyebrow. James nodded. "The RICO claim is aggressive but defensible. We have documented evidence of a coordinated campaign across multiple entities to devalue your property through illegal means, with communications showing intent to force you out for financial gain. The development company owned by Eleanor's husband stands to profit substantially if your land becomes available for residential development." Dr. Watkins chimed in, her academic precision lending weight to her words. "My analysis shows the systematic nature of their actions. The water interruption wasn't just harassment. It was timed specifically for maximum crop damage during the critical growing period. The financial models I prepared demonstrate how these actions, if successful, would make your operation financially unsustainable within 18 months. "What are we asking for?" Ryan asked. 3 components, James replied. "First, compensatory damages for actual losses. That's the crop damage, extra expenses, and projected revenue impacts. Our preliminary estimate puts that at around $1.2 million. Ryan whistled softly. Second, we're seeking punitive damages to deter future behavior. We're asking for $5 million there, though the court will likely reduce that somewhat. And third, permanent injunctive relief to prevent any future interference with your farm operations or water rights." The forensic accountant, a silver-haired man with wire-rimmed glasses, spoke up. "I've analyzed the HOA's financial statements. They maintain a reserve fund of approximately $3.4 million and carry liability insurance with coverage up to $2 million. However, their policy has exclusions for intentional acts and willful misconduct, which could leave them personally exposed." Ryan considered this. "Have we approached them about settlement?" James nodded. 3 times. They've rejected all overtures. Their attorney, Harrison Wells, is known for aggressive litigation tactics. He's convinced the board they can outspend you and eventually force you to abandon the case. They don't know you're working on contingency, Ryan observed. Correct. That's our ace. They think you're paying hourly rates that would bankrupt most individuals within months. They're expecting you to run out of money and give up. The Meadowbrook County Courthouse had never seen such crowds. By the third day of the trial, locals were lining up before dawn to secure seats in the gallery. The case had transcended local news, with state media covering what they called a defining battle over rural rights and development pressures. Farmers from 3 counties away drove in to show support, their weathered pickup trucks forming an impromptu honor guard in the courthouse parking lot. Inside the courtroom, James Chen methodically presented Ryan's case with surgical precision. The video evidence of Eleanor and the board members tampering with the water line played on the courtroom monitors, drawing audible gasps from the jury. The agricultural economist testified about the calculated timing of the water sabotage, explaining how it maximized damage during the critical growing period. Most devastating was the testimony from former Oak Ridge residents who described similar patterns of targeted harassment. Melissa Harker, a retired school teacher, recounted how the HOA had fined her relentlessly for a wheelchair ramp installed for her husband. Mrs. Harrington told me that visible accommodations damage property values and suggested we should consider a facility that caters to people with special needs. Through it all, Eleanor Harrington maintained her composure, right until James played the recording of her saying, "People like you don't belong here." As her voice echoed through the courtroom, several jurors visibly recoiled. One elderly man on the jury, a former farmer himself judging by his callous hands, shook his head slowly, his expression hardening. HOA's defense strategy crumbled further when the property management company representative admitted under cross-examination that they had selectively enforced rules against Ryan's property while ignoring similar violations by board members' homes. James projected side-by-side photos showing Eleanor's non-compliant garden sculpture alongside citation letters sent to other residents for similar installations. "Would you say the HOA enforces its rules equally?" James asked. "We try to prioritize the most visible violations," the manager stammered. "So some homeowners are more equal than others," James pressed. Harrison Wells objected vehemently, but the damage was done. The jury had seen the pattern. By the final day, the gallery was packed with local farmers wearing caps and shirts emblazoned with Save Willow Creek Farm and Farmers Feed America. Ryan sat quietly at the plaintiff's table, his grandfather's pocket watch in his hand, a tactile reminder of why this fight mattered beyond dollars and cents. When the jury returned after just 4 hours of deliberation, the forewoman, a middle-aged woman who Ryan recognized as owning the local hardware store, stood to deliver the verdict. "In the matter of Caldwell versus Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association, we find for the plaintiff on all counts." The courtroom erupted in cheers before Judge Myers could gavel for order. With the room quieted, the judge asked, "And what damages does the jury award?" For compensatory damages, the sum of $1.2 million, the forewoman announced. For punitive damages, the sum of $3.8 million. Ryan sat stunned. $5 million in total, far more than he had expected. Judge Myers issued a permanent injunction against any HOA interference with the farm's operations or water rights and ordered the defendants to pay all court costs. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Ryan for comment. He spoke briefly, his voice thick with emotion. "This wasn't just about my farm. It was about whether wealthy interests can force out people who don't fit their vision of who belongs. Today, the jury said they cannot." The aftermath came swiftly. The HOA's insurance company invoked the willful misconduct exclusion in their policy, refusing to cover the punitive damages. Facing personal liability, several board members resigned immediately. Within a month, the Oak Ridge HOA declared bankruptcy, unable to pay the judgment or manage its ongoing operations. Eleanor Harrington listed her house for sale 3 weeks after the verdict, the for sale sign appearing overnight. Neighbors reported that she'd been quietly shopping for property in a gated community 2 counties away. Ryan, meanwhile, found himself with resources he'd never imagined. After consulting with